Okay, Agud Tavach, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. I didn't mention the dedications in the beginning of the share. The first share was sponsored by Shalom Fogel, Menachos Yaakov Zeb ben Yodaye, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzivya Miriam Bas Gad, Yosef ben Tziyam ben Yaakov Zev, the full Shalema for Moshe Ari ben Miriam, for the schus of Chayat Tzivya Bas Shoshana Gittel. She should be a Kala, also Batya Bat Sarah. She should find a great shidduch. By Baruch Ian, Lila Nishmas Yaakov Chaim and Abba Esther Bas Yona, Avram ben Shmuel HaKain, the full Shalema for Liba Bas Anya, the full Shalema for Yosef Shmuel ben Miriam, and for a great healthy mommy, healthy baby, for everyone that's expecting, especially for Ariel and Lior Bas Elza Rivka. Want to have a mind of special for Shalema, for Shendel Tzipora Shena Bas Sarah, for Yochai ben Ruchama Mishmei ben Esther Fradel, Yitzhak ben Tziyam ben Dusha. They should have a refuah shalema b'sek she'achel Yisrael. Okay, we are holding on the bottom of Daf Chavav Amud Beis. Boy Reb Yitzhak Nafcha. Eivarin shesidran b'tzidei hamarachamau. This is something that Eddie would do. He put the limbs on the side of the pyre instead of on top of the pyre, and it's there's a lot of heat there. So aliba demandi amar al mamish. There's machlokes whether al means only on top of, or it could also mean alongside. So aliba demandi amar al mamish loitibaylach. It's not a shayla. The al eitzim ksiv. It says it has to be on the wood. Ki tibaylach aliba demandi amar al besamach. That al could also mean alongside. Mai hachanami al besamach. It could be al eitzim alongside the wood. Oidilma ala eitzim dumya dalam mizbech. On the wood has to be like on the altar. Ma hasam al mamish. It's actually on top of the altar. Af hachanami. It has to be al mamish, actually on top of the wood. Take tishbi atatz kushas v'bais. Now, the next mishnah is. Remember I told you that there's a lot of code words that teach us that something has to be. It's indispensable. One is where it says chukah. One is where it says kocha. One is where it says tiyeh, b'av yasei tehei. One is where it repeats it. So now we're going to learn a lot of different things that must be. HaKaimetz mi'utay ma'akev esrubai. The kmitza, even if a little bit is missing, it's no good. Isarain, the isarain flour, mi'utay ma'akav esruba. Even if a little bit is missing, it's no good. Hayayin, the wine, whether it's the chatz yahin, the 6 lug of a par, the shlishas ahin, the 4 lug of an ayil, or the revius ahin, the 3 lug of a lamb. Mi'utay ma'akav esruba. Even if a little bit is missing, it's no good. Hashemen, oil, the loig of oil, miuta ma'akav esruba. You have to have the whole thing. Haseilis v'hashemen makvin zezeh. The flour and the oil, if one is missing, it ruins it. Hakaimetz v'alavayna, the kmitza and the frankincense, ma'akvin zezeh, invalidate one another. So now the Gemara tells us, how do we know these things? My time. Amakra, it says, Malay kumtzai trei zimnei, telling us you need the whole kmitza, because if it says it 2 times, it's ma'akev. Isarin mi'utay ma'akev esruba. How do we know that the isurin, even a little bit is no good? My timer. Amakra misolta. Now it could have said misoles. When it says misolta, the extra hay comes to tell us that you need the whole amount. Shem chas v'kol shu psula. Hayayin mi'utay ma'akev esruba, because it says the key word kacha. Remember, we said kocha is li'ikuva. It has to be like this. Hashem and miyuta ma'akev esrubai. The oil of miyut is ma'akev raiv. It depends. The minchas nisachim, if it's the oil of the mincha of the libations, it says kocha. The minchas nedava amakra mishamna, from the extra hay. Shem chaser kol shu psula. Hashem and vaselis ma'akvin zeh. Hashem and cells impede one another, because it says misilta or mishamna. And it says by barley migirsa, from its grain, umishamna. HaKaimitz v'alavayna ma'akvin zeh. The kaimitz and lavayna are ma'akv one another because it repeats it. It says it twice. Al kol vaynasa, and it says ves kol alavayna asher ala mincha. So it says it twice to tell you that it's ma'akev. The next Mishnah continues the same idea. Shnei sira Yom Kippurim ma'akvin zeh. The two goats of Yom Kippur, the Sar Hashem and the Sar Azazel, are ma'akev one another. Shnei kifsei atzeres, the two lambs for Shavuos, ma'akvin zeh. Shtei chalois ma'akvin zuazu. The two loaves of Shavuos are ma'akev one another. Shnei sdar ma'akvin zeh. The two rows of 6 chalos of lechem aponim are ma'akev one another. Shnei vazichin, the two sensifuls of frankincense of the shulchan ma'akvin zeh. Hasdarim v'abazichen ma'akvin zeh. The rows and the frankincense are ma'akev one another. Shnei minim shebenazir, the carbon of a nazir, the ayil of a nazir is accompanied by 10 loaves and 10 wafers. The shnei minim shebenazir and shloisha shebapara, the 3 types that are dipped in the meichatas by the paraduma, the 8 errors, the 8 errors, the cedar, the shni salas, the red thread, and the hyssop. The 4 different types of loaves by the taida, 3 of matzah and 1 of chametz, 30 of matzah and 10 of chametz. And the 4 components of the lulav, right? The lulav esrig, the hadas, and the arava. The birds of the mitzayra together with the hyssop, cedar, and scarlet thread. Ma'akvin zeh. Shiva hazoy shiva para, the 7 sprinklings of the paraduma towards el noichich pnei oyel mayed. Ma'ak v'zu ezu. Sheva hazoy shal bein abadim on Yom Kippur, the 7 applications in the Kodesh Kodashim between the badim shal paroiches and against the paroiches, and shal mizbeach hazav, and on the mizbeach hazav. Ma'ak v'zu ezu. So now again, the Gemara continues to show us how we know these things. So says the Gemara, Shnei sira Yom Kippur ma'akvin zeh, because here it uses the other code word. Remember, just like kocha is ma'akev, so also chukah. It says chukah. Shnei kifsei atzeres ma'akvin zeh. Why? Because shnei kifsei atzeres ma'akvin zeh, because it says havaya. Havaya means b'hav yosen tehei. It has to be that way. Shtei chalas, also it says havaya. Shnei sedarim, the 2 rows of 6 and 6 by the lechem aponim, it says chukah. Shnei bazichen, it says chukah. Hasdarim v'abazichen, that the rows and the frankincense are ma'ak one another, it says chukah. Shnei minim shebenazir, the loaves and the wafers by the nazir, dichsiv, because it says kein yaseh, so it repeats, so you should do liikuva. Shloisha shebapara, the 3 types by the paraduma, the 8 zeros, the shni salas, and the A's of the hyssop, it says chukah. Abba shebetaida, the 30 loaves of matzah and the 10 loaves of chametz by the taida, that's because the taida is iskish l'nazir. We already said that the nazir is ma'akev, and taida is juxtaposed to nazir, d'chsiv al zevach taida shlamav, and the word shlamav refers also to the Shalmei Nazir. V'amamar Shlamav l'Rabbi Shalmei Nazir. So Toda is juxtaposed to Nazir, just like the Nazir is Ma'akev, so also the Toda is Ma'akev. V'abashib and Tzaira, the birds, the hyssop, the scarlet thread, and the cedar, the chsiv zois tia teres of Messiah. So again, tia, b'av yosatei. V'abashib lulav, how do we know the 4 types of the lulav? Because it says ulekachtem, and lekachtem is a composite word, lekicha toma. It has to be a complete taking. You have to have all 4 of the species. Now, but the Gemara now says, but you don't have to hold them all together. You don't have to bundle them up. Amar Rav Chanan bar Rava leishanu ele she'ein lei. It's only no good if you're missing one of them. Aval yesh lei ein ma'akvin, it's not ma'akiv, it's not essential that it should be bundled up. So the Gemara says we learned not that way. Meisvei, Abba minim shebelulav, the 4 species of the lulav. Shnayim mehem oisim peiris, 2 of them produce fruit. That's the lulav, which is the date palm and the esrig. Or shnayim mehem ein oisim peiris, 2 don't produce fruit. Oisim peiris yield zekukin l'she'ein oisim peiris. Those that produce fruit require those that don't produce fruit. V'she'ein ois in Paris use a kukun lois in Paris. And you don't fulfill your requirement until they're all in one bundle. And also Klal Yisrael, when they appease Hashem, their appeasement does not work until everybody is one group. That's why they say Tzibur stands for Tzadikim Beinanim Rishon. We have to be in one group before Hashem. He builds in the heaven his chambers, and his unification al Eretz Yisada is found upon earth. Says the Gemara, you're right. It's a machlokes Tanoim whether the lulav needs to be bundled or not. Tanoihi. It's a machlokes Tanoim. The Tanya. Lulav bein ogud bein she'ena ogud kosher. A lulav, whether it's bundled or not, it's kosher. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer ogud kosher. If it's bundled, it's kosher. She'ena ogud pasel. But if it's not bundled, it's pasel. It's machlokes. My time with Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason, Rabbi Yehuda? He learns out Gzeir Shava Gamar Kicha Kicha Miaguzis Ezav. He learns out Gzeir Shava Kicha from the bundle of hyssop. Just like the bundle of hyssop that the Jews dipped the blood and put it on the doorpost in Mitzrayim needed to be bundled. Afkan ba'agudas, so here also it needs to be bundled. The Rabbanan don't hold the Gzeir Shava of Kicha Kicha. Rabbanan loigamrei Kicha Kicha. But then we seem to have a midway shot. Come on, also hadisanya lulav mitzvah la'agdai. It's proper to bind it, but v'lima amlay agdai kasha. But if you don't bind it, it's kasha. Now that's not Rabbi Yehuda because he says you must bind it. Rabbi Yehuda, am I kasha? If you don't bind it, why is it kasha? And Rabbanan, they say you don't have to bind it. My mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? Says Gemara La'ilam Rabbanan. Well, what's the mitzvah? The mitzvah is it looks nicer, and the mitzvah is zekei levanveyu. And my mitzvah mishum zekei levanveyu. No, it's a side mitzvah of hisna lefun of the mitzvahs. You should be beautiful Hashem with the mitzvahs. Sheva hazoy shebapara ma'ak v'zuezu, the 7 sprinklings of the paraduma towards the oil mayed are ma'ak of one another. Sheva hazoy shal bein abadim. Why? Because it says chukah. Sheva hazoy shal bein abadim, the 7 spraying on Yom Kippur between the poles. V'shal mizbeach hazav, and on the golden altar v'shal aparayches. So on Yom Kippur, the Yom Kippurim ksiv chukah. Now, then there are those that don't go in the Kodesh Kodashim, but they go against the parayches and against the mizbeach hazav. That's the par koyin Mashiach, the bull of the koyin Mashiach, or par helam davar shel tziver, or the sirei avodas kechavim, and the goat of avodah zara. How do we know this? Kedetanya. It says, "V'asal apar," you should do for the bull of the Helm Davar Shel Tzibur Kasher asal apar, like you did for the Par Koyin Mashiach. Now, since it says both their procedures, Matam Ulayma, what do we learn from there? We learn it to repeat it. Shem Chiser Achas Min HaMatanos, that if you're missing any of the placements, Lo Yasa Klum, it's no good. Now, since we already turned the page, we want to welcome in Mo Kushner, Ben Zion Cohn, Dr. Black, Irving Fishbaum, Ruvain Shannon, Yaakov Warman, Yitzi Fuchs, Barish Gesseman, Eddie Chazan, Dr. Guy, Mel Zachter, Michal Avram Chavin. We want to welcome in Shimon Klein, Gedalia Engel, Shelley Zeitlin, Yitzi Muller, Barry Cement, Yisrael Fisher, A.B. Spry, Marshall Castle, Menachem Yemansky, Nachman Chapler, Danny Vogel, Rabbi Kranz, Chaim Lerner, Ilya Shutman, Moshe Lehman, Elia Yaffe, Chaim Braun. I'm not sure what Daddy is, and we want to welcome in David Helfgott. Okay. Maybe Daddy is Gabriel Epstein. Now, Tan Rabbanan. Sheva Hazoy Shebapara, the 7 sprinklings of the paraduma towards the oil ma'id, she'asan, if you did them, bein shaloi lishman, if you did them without the right thought, bein shaloi mechuvanos, or you didn't direct it, noichach pnei oyel moed, psulas. V'shebefnim, the 7 that are performed inside the mikdash, v'shebemitzayra, and the 7 of the oil of mitzayra, shaloi lishman psulos, they're no good if they're not lishma, but shaloi mechuvanos ksheres, if they're not directed properly, they're kosher. Says the Gemara, but vatanya gabe para shaloi lishman psulans. If you did even the paraduma shaloi lishman is possible, but shaloi mechuvanos ksheres. So earlier we learned by the paraduma that if it's not in the right direction, it's no good. And here we learn that if it's not in the right direction, it is good. Says the Gemara, that's machlokes Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rav Chisda, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbanan. Now we go into a lengthy discussion of a machlokes Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda. First of all, this is good information. The Tanya, Mechusrei kapara, if somebody is lacking atonement, that means he's a zav, counted 7 days, he had nightfall, but he didn't bring his karbanos yet. Shenichnasu la'azara, if he enters the azara, if he does a b'shageg yischai v'chatas, if he does a b'mezid, onish karas, and that's true, also true by any other person that's tummy. Who touched the shemes, went to the mikveh but didn't have nightfall, ushar kol atmeim, and of course other people that are tummy, b'shageg it's a chatas, b'mezid it's karas. Utahirim shenichnasu lefnim michatzasan, a Yisrael is allowed to go 11 amas in the Azara. Past that, if he goes lefnim michatzasan, or a kohen that goes lehechel kulai into the temple without reason, ba'abam is malchus. The base lepareiches, if he goes behind the curtain, el pnei akapiris, and in front of the ark in the Kodesh Kodashim, b'misa. That's misa b'dei shemayim. Rabbi Yehuda restricts misa b'dei shemayim only if he's standing on top of the aron. If he just goes in behind the curtain, there's no misa. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, kol echel kulai umi beis lepareiches, and even if he goes behind the curtain, ba'arba. If he goes el pnei akapiris, that's misa. So Rabbanan hold it's misa anytime you go into the Kodesh Kodashim, even behind the curtain. Rabbi Yehuda says it's only misa if you're standing right on top of the aron. So the Gemara says, "B'may kamiflagi." What are the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda arguing about? B'haikra. It says in the pasuk, "Yomer Hashem al Moshe." Hashem said to Moshe, "Daber el Aaron achicha." Speak to Aaron, your brother. V'al yava b'chol eis al hakodesh. He shouldn't go into the kodesh without reason. Mibeis lepareiches, behind the curtain. Al pnei kapiris, in front of the ark. Asher al ha'oren v'lo yomas, that he shouldn't die. So Rabbanan Savrei, el hakodesh, if he goes into the temple without reason, below yava. That's allowed, that's malchus. Mibeis lepareiches el pnei kapiris. The second things, whether he goes behind the curtain or he goes in front of the ark, that's below yamas. That's misa. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, no. Rabbi Yehuda breaks it the other way. Ela kodesh mibeis lepareiches, into the temple and behind the curtain, that's below yavam. That's only allowed. El pnei kapiris, in front of the kapiris, in front of the aron, that's below yamas. That's misa. Okay. So first thing where it says, my time in the Rabbanan, that they hold both the lefnei kapiris, behind the curtain, and also in front of the aron is misa. My time in the Rabbanan, because Isa kedaita kedikam Rabbi Yehuda, then just lichtov rachmana el hakodesh, that is a lav, and el pnei kapiris, in front of the aron, is death. And I'll know that if into the temple is a lav, then surely behind the curtain is a lav. According to you, that holds that that's only a lav. We're not have to say mebeis lepareiches, because anamina heichel mechayev. If you're chayev, if you just go into the kodesh, mebeis lepareiches mebay. Of course you're chayev if you go within the curtain. Mebeis lepareiches the kaser rachman alamali. Why does it say behind the curtain? To tell me that that's also misa. Shma mina b'misa. Rabbi Yehuda, he says differently. Rabbi Yehuda, ikas rachmana el HaKodesh, if it just said el HaKodesh and el pnei HaKapiris, I would think el HaKodesh just means behind the curtain. Ikas rachmana el HaKodesh v'lo ikas mi beis l'pareiches, behind the curtain. I might think my kodesh mi beis l'pareiches. Havamina my kodesh mi beis l'pareiches. It's only behind the curtain. But in the temple itself, there isn't even a lav. Aval heichel lav nami loi. The Rabbanan say, you can't think that in the heichel there's no lav, because the pasuk says ala kodesh, and the whole heichel is called kodesh. Rabbanan ahu loi matzas amit. The heichel kula yikra kodesh. The whole temple is called the kodesh, like it says, Shnema v'ivdila pareiches lachem. The curtains separate ben kodesh ben kodesh kodashim. So since it says ala kodesh, we know that the heichel is a lav. Rabbi Yehuda my timer, so let's get back to Rabbi Yehuda. So that behind the curtain you're also chayiv misa. So licht rachman ala kodesh u'mibeis ha'pareiches, and it shouldn't have to say in front of the ark. V'loi boyel pnei ha'kaparis, because if you're chayiv, if you go behind the curtain, surely chayiv if you stand in front of the ark. Mana mina mibeis ha'pareiches b'mitzah, behind the curtain is b'mitzah el pnei ha'kaparis b'moi. Then surely if it's in front of the ark, el pnei ha'kaparis because of rachman alamali. Why does it say el pnei ha'kaparis? Shma mina el pnei ha'kaparis is b'misa. Only that's b'misa, while b'beis ha'pareiches is only a lav. Rabbanan say you're right. Since it says behind the curtain is misa, it really doesn't have to say el pnei ha'kaparis. For Rabbanan hachanami deloit tzarach, it really doesn't have to say it. Why does it say it? V'hai dekasiv rachmana el pnei ha'kaparis, that's l'me'utei derech meshupash, that you only chayav misa if you come straight from the east. If you tunnel your way in from the south, from the north, if you come in from the roof, you're not chayav. Kedetana debei Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, it says al pnei ha'kaparis kedma. It's only if it's zebana of kol makom shenema pnei eine ela pnei kadim. It's only when you come to the east. So therefore, you're only chayiv when you come from the east. So Rabbi Yehuda says you're right. Rabbi Yehuda leimakra pnei ha'kaparis. My el. So el is there. Shma mina el dafka. So it's coming to tell me that only if it's pnei ha'kaparis are you chayiv misa. Rabbanan el lav dafka. Oh. So if over here Rabbi Yehuda holds el is dafka, Rabbi Yehuda the Amar el pnei ha'kaparis dafka, then vehiza el noichach, when it says by the Parah Aduma, it should be el noichach pnei ha'mayed nami dafka. And therefore, if it's done shaloi mechuvanais, not directly, it's no good. Rabbanan midahasam lav dafka, just like el pnei ha'kaparis is lav dafka, because Yechayiv also, if you come behind the curtain, hachanami lav dafka over here also by the paraduma, even if it's not straight, noichach pnei ha'mayed, it's not mechuvanais, it's still kosher. Wow, Rabbi, I have to tell you, this was a tall order tonight. A lot of Gemara, and what a way to start the new week. Okay, we're going to pause now, and then we're going to do the Mishnah Yomis.